So let's talk about Javon Kinlaw in particular. He's entering year 2. Just got a lot of praise from Brian Baldinger, who does his homework and knows what he's talking about. Showed all of his nice plays, and what you can see from Javon Kinlaw is he can be very good against the run. He's very big. He's hard to move. He's very strong, and he changes directions well. He's pretty fast for his size. Very good run defender. The question is, what kind of potential does he have as a pass rusher? What's your expectation for him in year 2?
Yeah, it's interesting when you look at Kinlaw because, as you mentioned, the strengths are his athleticism. He's extremely powerful, and he's got really long arms. His arms are almost 35 inches, 35 inches long.
Yeah.
And I think all that helps him really, with his run defense. He does a really good job of getting those arms extended and shedding and be able to chase down the running backs. That's where he shows his athleticism. But I agree with you 100%. The weak part of his game is the pass rush. And this goes back to, even in college, he wasn't a really much of a premier pass rusher. And so when you watch him, his biggest weakness is
how he won as a pass rusher in college and now. I mean, it's not with finesse and multiple moves strung together, is it?
No, there's not. And that's kind of where I was going to go. Is he doesn't have the moves. He's pretty much a bull rush guy. He's pretty much going to he's basically just trying to drive the center or guard back into the quarterback and then shed him and chase him down. But he doesn't have a swim move. He doesn't really have anything other than that pass rush move the bull rush move that he can go to and win consistently.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. Some of the stuff that he does well doesn't show up in the stats, right? We talk about sacks and quarterback hits, both numbers. He only had 4 quarterback hits all year last year, and his sacks all came in one game. But there was one play in particular against the Rams when I did a breakdown last week that stood out to me, and that was one where they had him working with the defensive end on a little bit of a game on the outside, and it was just timed up so perfectly that as Hyder got into the tackle and guard, he came right around the edge, and his athleticism, if he had just driven himself into the quarterback, I think he gets a sack, but instead Goff escapes up the field. It turns out to be the play that Ward hits him and he fumbles, and Hyder gets the recovery. So there's no stat that shows what a good play that was by Kinlaw, but that's an example. If they can use him in that manner where he's just using his athleticism, it might be a way to kind of help him generate some numbers that he didn't get last year.
Now that we've been talking about him, I mean, the long arms, the ability to lock out and shed and pursue, he'd be such a good fit in a traditional 3-4, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that he's so
really
big.
Kind of suit him.
He's so big and his pad level's a little high, so I question his ability to really shoot gaps. But in a 3-4, he'd be fantastic at two-gapping, straight up. I think he's a terrific two-gap. And it seemed to me the highlights that Baldinger were posting was Kinlaw basically two-gapping and controlling a guy and both gaps. Well, that's great. It's a rare skill. You don't really see guys being able to do that anymore.
Yeah, well, he should be able to shoot. He should be able to play gaps hard, and you see him do that at times where he kind of gets up in there. He's got the athleticism, so he's got the explosiveness to do it. It's just a matter of, especially in pass rush situations, you'd like to see him doing that more. He just doesn't really. You watch film with the defensive line, and it's almost as if Contavious Street is a better interior pass rusher than Javon Kinlaw, at least last year.
So where's the best spot for Kinlaw on 3rd and 7? Where would you put? Which technique would you play him at?
I'd want if I'm going to have to play him on pass rushing downs, I'm going to probably be working him. I'd like to work him over with Nick Bosa and have those two kind of, because Bosa has that ability to start out wide and really force play up inside. Right? We've seen him do that, and I think those two over there could really do some nice games together. To where they could really cause some problems for the offensive linemen. So that may be where we see his improvement come from in 2021, because that's the side he's going to play on anyway, I believe.
How many sacks would you expect from Kinlaw?
I'm going to say if the 49ers can get 4 to 5 sacks out of Kinlaw, I think they've got to be really happy. I think if you can get more than that out of him, I think you're ecstatic, because I think those would be huge numbers for a guy that's never really been a big sack guy even in college.
Yeah, and I think his production, his sack production, will kind of depend on where he is in the pecking order. Like if he's the fourth rusher and the other three guys on the line are really causing havoc, he could get a lot of sacks just because of the matchups. But if he's, if Armstead isn't producing and D Ford's out, and Ebicom's not producing, and Nick Bosa's out, then I think you'll see, him get shut out the way he did last year. That's just my feeling. I don't think he's, because I mean Buckner was the kind of guy who could actually get sacks even if he was the only good player on the defensive line. I don't see that Kinlaw being that kind of guy, but he could definitely be like Armstead, where if he's the third or fourth best rusher on the line, he could get 10 sacks.
Yeah, he could. And when you look at the couple of sacks that he got last year, they were both in situations, kind of like you said, where he's kind of cleaning up, because both times were against New Orleans were when the backups were in the game, and so those guys are kind of holding the ball, bouncing around, not getting the ball in their hands as quickly, and so he's able to get in and make the sack. So I think you're right. If the other three guys are wreaking havoc, then that might help him get his numbers up.
Yeah. So I think it's important to remember that he's basically a run defender by nature. He does have some potential as a pass rusher, the way that Eric Armstead has potential as a pass rusher. I mean, I wouldn't write off Eric Armstead. He could have 10 sacks this year, but he's never going to be the same kind of player that Buckner is. There's just a difference. And I think maybe you could say that Kinlaw's a better run defender than Buckner. I think he is a better run defender than Buckner. He's heavier, harder to move.
I think they're different players in that Buckner's inside, or not Buckner, but Armstead is he's on the outside, so he's kind of setting the edge, and so he's a really good run defender on the edge, and you've got Kinlaw, who's more of a really good run defender inside. So that's really where they kind of complement each other. It'll be interesting to see them rush next to each other inside, because that's where Armstead gets his work done, is on the inside, and that's you go back and you watch them play, and it's almost as if you just need to get Javon Kinlaw and Eric Armstead to really work on some techniques together. Because if Kinlaw can minimize, because when you watch Armstead, he's got a great swim technique. He does a really good job of getting himself thin through the pass rush to get through the line of scrimmage, and that's really kind of what we're talking about with Kinlaw, right? The swim technique, kind of being able to rip, but as you're ripping, you're turning your shoulders and getting skinny in the hole. So Kinlaw needs to get his pass rushing game up to where Armstead's is from the inside.
Maybe instead of hunting squirrels, he can hang out with Armstead and DeForest Buckner in Hawaii and learn Buckner's technique. I don't know. I'm just saying. But last thing I want to ask you before we move on, who do you think is a better player right now, Javon Kinlaw or DJ Jones?
I would rather see DJ Jones taking those reps, because DJ Jones to me has always been a really good player. He's a big guy, but he moves really well.
He shoots
I would almost say that he's way quicker than
I wouldn't just force Kinlaw into a 3-down roll just because you took him with the 14th pick. That's irrelevant now. That's in the past. I want the 4 best rushers on the field, and I'm not sure that he's one of the 2 best interior pass rushers. Armstead's one. DJ Jones could be the other. Kevin Givens could be the other. So I'd like to see that he actually earns it, because, Solomon Thomas got a lot of reps he didn't deserve as a pass rusher. He was, I understand having him on the field as a run defender, but I'd like to see that with Kinlaw to earn it.
I agree with you. And I personally, I would go as far as to say that Kevin Givens and Kentavious Street are both better pass rushers from the inside right now than Kinlaw.
I forgot Street. Street's good. He's explosive.
Yeah, and it's funny because I've been breaking down a couple of the games, because if you remember, kind of the middle of the season was when folks got really excited about the performance of Kinlaw. So I looked at his games against the Saints and the Rams. Yeah. Shoot, against the Rams, he only played 21 downs. There was long stretches of that game where it was just Givens and Street playing the whole way through.
Wow. And those guys are good, honestly. I mean, it just, in hindsight, nothing against Kinlaw, but they actually didn't have a need. I know it seemed crazy. You're losing DeForest Buckner. He's the best player on your team. Arguably, you got to replace that spot. Yeah, but Street, Givens, Jones, they're all good. So if only they had gotten worse. But, hey, that's not what we're here to talk about.
Yeah, real quick, though, when you look at that, they weren't sure what they were going to get from Street, because he was coming back from that injury, and he just barely played a little bit at the end of 2019.
And who was Kevin Givens?
So they weren't quite sure. Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And those guys both kind of came on, and they've made that position almost expendable.
Yeah. Oh well.